Welcome back to We the People. Loving what you're watching? Don't miss a moment of We the People or any of your favorite Now Media TV shows live or on demand anytime, anywhere. Download the free Now Media TV app on Roku or iOS and enjoy instant access to our full lineup of bilingual programming in both English and Spanish. Prefer to listen on the go? Catch the podcast version of the show right on Now Media TV website www.nowmedia.tv. From business and breaking news to lifestyle, culture, and everything in between, Now Media TV is streaming 24/7, ready whenever you are. I'm here with attorney Elizabeth Trefonas. She's an expert in immigration, criminal, and family law, and has helped clients throughout the nation with immigration aspects. And in this segment, we're focusing on more of the preparedness. Emergencies can feel like a tsunami, and many people don't feel ready to swim through them. So let's talk about simple, proactive steps that make a big difference. Elizabeth, we're here so much about the border, asylum claims, migrant surges, and court backlogs. From your perspective, as someone working directly with the people most affected by this, what do people often misunderstand about asylum seekers and the realities of border policy?
Oh, that's a big question.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think people often miss is that we are treaty members of the United Nations Human Rights Convention, and that's a treaty that we've been part of, I don't since World War II, and it includes how we treat prisoners and includes how we treat refugees. And I'm a big proponent of if you have a rule, follow the rule. If you have a law, follow the law. If you don't like the rule or the law, then we should go about it as a democratic people and change it to what we'd like it to be. But currently, our law is that if you need to seek refugee status or refugee help and asylum, you are to turn yourself in at the border. You are to say, hello, I'm here and I need help. And as part of the UNHCR, we are a country that is going to take you in and go through the process of allowing you an opportunity to bear your burden of proving that you are entitled to this protection. Those surges, I think we could talk about the politics and the violence and the reasons behind the surges and who's responsible for that and who's not. But from my perspective, right, I'm dealing with a client who has showed up in my office. In
Mhm.
Jackson Hole, Wyoming, even, I represent orphans, unaccompanied minors, families that turn themselves in at the border, and they show up, they say, I'm here, I need help. Our US government takes them in and says, great, you're going to have a hearing here in about 6 months, and you're intending to live in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, because you have maybe an aunt or a cousin or a church there that's helping you. When someone walks into my office, border rules, politics, all important, but all aside, I'm looking at a human being, and often a human being with their children. And so my role becomes very different and much more maybe protective over this real person that's sitting in front of me. So from my perspective, I'm a believer that you do help the least of these, that we're called to do that. And when they walk into my office, I truly believe that these asylees and refugees are. But don't be mistaken. I need to prove their claim. I also need to prove they're not violent, that they don't have criminal histories, that they're not here to harm United States citizen people or others, and that their claim is true. So we work very, very hard to get to that burden and to establish that burden, but we have work to do. It's not as simple as I show up and you just let me in and then I'm here to stay. That's not the process. Um, I am very much a proponent for safe and secure borders and open and safe doors to provide help for the least of these.
And so, as a, I guess, background on mine, my parents are Cuban refugees.
Mhm.
They came over in 1962 with nothing to their name, three changes of clothes, and a baby on their hip.
Sure.
So I can, my heart goes out because I understand that that was a real situation, and you see this. And unfortunately, with the way that mainstream media is, and I think a lot of like social media has twisted
Mhm.
what is real, it is twisted so much, this issue that, or this topic, that it has allowed the real humanity of it to go unseen.
Mhm.
And I've seen it even in my own practice from almost 30 years of the effects. And I'm starting to see now more so even with our planning. If we have a family law case and we're trying to deal with time sharing with minor children and one of the spouses is undocumented, we're dealing with that planning. What if there's a deportation? What if their asylum claim is denied?
Sure.
And that is just something that goes beyond, I think, at least some people's conception, because it's not what their perspective is, or they don't see that aspect. So, and I really appreciate you looking at this because I just want the public to realize that yes, there's a lot of humanity here, but there are laws in place, as maybe messed up as some of those are, because they really do need to revamp the whole system. But most of these people that are seeking asylum are doing it in the rightful way and for the right purposes.
Sure. And I think as a person who represents asylum seekers, when they show up and turn themselves in at the border, they are following our rules. For them to then be released into the country and have future hearings, they are following the rules. For us to show up to the immigration judge and prove our asylum case and win that privilege, we are following the rules. So if the sentiment of the country, and we are a democratic people, is that we don't like those rules, okay, I can appreciate the vote to change that. But to really pin it on my client that somehow they're doing something nefarious or not doing it the right way, I take exception to that because they are following those rules. And of course, we have other humans who maybe came across and didn't turn themselves in the border and maybe, ran the border and had other reasons for it. And that is maybe a different conversation than the asylee conversation.
Right.
And we can talk a little bit more about that and polleros and cartels and human trafficking and victims. And that might be a different dynamic. But to really focus on what you asked me, which is the asylees and refugees, most humans that I work for and that I've ever come across did not leave their home because they preferred being in a strange land. There was something that drove them to seek safety. And that's what we focus on with our asylee clients.
And thank you. I think that's what needs to be heard and expressed. And then, so I have little experience with VAWA. And for those of you in our audience, that's Victims Against Women Act that allows for a visa for victims of domestic violence. And obviously, there's the criteria that falls within that. But I also want to touch upon unaccompanied minors, and you deal with victims of human trafficking as well, I'm assuming, because I know we have had huge busts of human trafficking and we're finding children being involved.
Sure.
Can you help maybe give a little bit of a scenario of what attorneys such as yourself are doing to help those victims into securing them not only here in the United States, but to allow them to be able to be free from further violence or threat of violence?
Sure. We work hand in hand with our local shelters or community safety networks, and our victim services with our police department and sometimes our sheriffs. So very often I'm flagged by a victim services representative who may have gotten word that there was a child living in a freezing cold, not even the basement, but the crawl space of a trailer home in our community. And when that gets flagged and our Department of Family Services gets called in, we will be called to assist that child as well. We also represent a lot of children that turn themselves in without a parent at the border, and then were somewhat sponsored is maybe the loose word for it, but by a family relative or a church that is here in our area. That's an unaccompanied minor, special immigrant juvenile, and we can seek certain status, privileges, and safety if we meet our burden of proof in those applications always that they qualify under the rules. Also, in Wyoming, we have a large group of homeless children who got into a rural part of the country, don't really know how they got here. Maybe they got left here young and have found themselves homeless in a very rural country.
Excuse me, little technical difficulty on my end. So, and So I understand because I remember I used to be an executive director of a legal aid, and we at that time initiated an immigration aspect of our legal services, which would help victims of domestic violence with VAWA visas, but also unaccompanied minors
Mhm.
to get that, to do the dependency so that they could get their legal status. But I can't even imagine how it, you present with having a little child who is homeless or doesn't even know. I mean, that to me is just heartbreaking. But so grateful to have attorneys such as yourself that are on the front lines and they're the first call. And that's what's so important. Okay, I know we only have a minute, um, but you know, you've been giving us such powerful insights, and despite all these challenges in the politics that are going, you seem to have, you're expressing there is some hope still for the future of immigration for those that wish to seek and to be able to live in this country and have the American dream. So, am I wrong in saying that there is still hope out there?
I think what's happening in a lot of the divisiveness, from my perspective, we talk about this with new attorneys and interns. It becomes very um, stark what people's feelings are. And I think if we can have those discussions, if I can be my point of view and I can talk with somebody in Wyoming who may have a different point of view, statistically speaking, in Wyoming, that happens to me a lot, but we can come to a resolution and really have that conversation, then you may find we have found the perfect solution because we were willing to look at both sides so dramatically. I'm not of the opinion that having really diverse opinions is necessarily a bad idea if we can sit down and communicate with each other. But I think there's hope. I'm a believer in the history of this country. I'm a believer that immigrants actually do make our communities safer and our economies thrive. Jackson Hole is based on our immigrant community. That's why we are the place people want to come to and see the glorious Tetons, is because we have hardworking people here, and I think they'll keep coming, and so will the tourists, and we'll keep moving forward.
Elizabeth, where can viewers find you? Websites, social media, newsletters. I mean, I want them to learn how to contact you for more information, but also to seek you out for legal assistance.
Thank you, Alina. I have said in the past that people could give us a call. You still can call us, but I have also let people know that we answer our phone actually with real human beings, namely Milesa, and it seems like she's getting a little too many calls these days. So the website's great. We have a contact us page that actually comes directly to me that I screen. You can follow us on Facebook. I put out local information, particularly what's happening with maybe ICE here in the county and in our region, and new law changes. But I'm always willing to get that Facebook message as well. So happy to have people reach out to me. Give me a beat to get back to you. But we certainly will. And it's a pleasure to visit with you, Alina.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth, for joining us. And thank you for the important work you do. And that is with all earnesty. And for our viewers, if you'd like to learn more about attorney Elizabeth Trefonas and her team, you can visit trefonaslaw.com. And we will, and also you can go to nowmedia.tv, not only in this episode, but you will see that all the information to get a hold of Elizabeth. I'm Alina Gonzalez Dockery, and this is We the People, where we bring practical legal insight to everyday lives. Stay informed, stay empowered, and stay tuned because I have another very special guest for our next half hour.